They said the West was a hard place, dry and merciless, a land that ground a man down to dust if he didn't stand firm. But even in a place that cruel, what Tom Garrison saw that day stayed with him for the rest of his life. Down by the old well at the edge of the trail, a woman sat in the dirt like her soul had been drained from her body. Her dress was torn nearly to rags, her skin scraped raw, and her hair hung in tangled strands across her face. In her arms she clutched a stained sack so tightly her knuckles showed white. No one in Dodge City knew her, but if they had seen those eyes, they would never forget them. Green as prairie glass, hollow as if the fire inside had been put out forever. The sun that afternoon was brutal, burning high and heavy. Tom was riding slow along the Santa Fe trail, sweat dripping beneath his hat brim, thinking about nothing more than the corral fence that needed mending back home. Then he heard it. Not the wind, not a bird. A sound so faint it barely reached his ears, a cracked whisper, half a prayer. He reined in his horse, scanning the brush. And there she was, slumped against the well. She didn't move when his boots hit the ground. She just looked up once, voice rasping dry as desert wind. "Please, don't open it yet." 6 words, enough to stop him cold. Tom had served in the cavalry. He knew the look of someone hanging on by a thread. He didn't ask questions. He just offered his hand, steady and sure. She let him help her up, the sack shifting in her arms with a weight that wasn't right. Not grain, not tools. Something else. Something that made his spine crawl. By sundown, she was riding behind him, arms wrapped around the sack as the horse carried them toward his ranch. The land stretched wide and empty, shadows long in the dying light. Tom didn't know what he'd gotten himself into, but he knew trouble had a way of finding its own trail. At the ranch, he helped her down and led her inside. The place was plain, clapboard walls, a creaking floor, and the dry scent of hay drifting through the open window. He set beans on the stove, slid cornbread onto a plate, and pushed it toward her. She sat stiffly, one arm still wrapped around the bundle. At last she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It's all I have left from my sister. If you open it, you'll be in this with me. And once you're in, there's no stepping out." Tom leaned back, studying her. He'd seen men lie to save their hides, but this wasn't a lie. This was the kind of truth that pressed down on a soul like a mountain. He didn't push further. Some answers came in their own time. The next morning, hoofbeats rolled across his yard. Tom stepped out, squinting into the sun. A tall, narrow-shouldered man in a dust-stained coat sat at the gate. His horse looked strong, his eyes sharper still. "Clayton wants what she's holding," he said, voice flat. Tom crossed his arms. "Your boss can come ask himself." The man gave a thin smile. "He will, but you won't like the company he brings." He tugged the reins, turned, and left a cloud of dust behind him. Inside, the woman, Mary Ellen, she finally told him, stood pale and trembling. "That was one of his," she said, clutching the sack tighter. By afternoon, 2 riders came. The tall man again and another heavier, scar across his cheek pulling his smile sideways. "Clayton's done asking," the tall one said, "and I'm done listening." Tom answered, standing near the barn with his Winchester resting steady in his hands. Scarface chuckled. "We'll just take it." Tom didn't move. "You set foot on that porch and I'll drop you where you stand." For a long moment the yard held its breath. Then Tom's finger moved and the rifle cracked, splitting the air. The bullet tore a fence post inches from Scarface's leg. Dust exploded, horses reared, and the silence that followed was heavy as stone. The tall rider pulled his partner back. "Not here, not now." Their eyes flicked to the ridge far off, something glinting. Maybe a marshal's patrol, maybe just sun on rock. Either way, they turned and rode out, fast and angry, dust trailing behind them. Inside, Mary Ellen stood by the window, sack clutched tight. "They'll be back," she whispered. "Not if they've got sense," Tom said, sliding the bolt across the door. But he knew better. Trouble like that didn't give up easy. That night the ranch was quiet under a wide blue sky. Mary Ellen sat near the fire, the sack close but no longer held like a lifeline. In the glow of the flames, she looked different, Less like a hunted creature, more like someone remembering what it felt like to be safe, if only for a moment. Tom poured coffee into 2 tin mugs. He didn't ask about the sack again. Instead, he told her about the time his cavalry unit had been trapped in a mountain snowstorm, how they survived by sharing every scrap of food they had. It wasn't advice, just a story. But she listened, eyes softening in the firelight. After a long silence, she said, "I'm not running from the law. I'm running from a man who thinks he can take everything and leave nothing. This sack is all I have left of my sister. If it stays with me, then a part of her stays too." Tom nodded slowly. He knew loss. He'd carried it himself. But he also knew that sometimes the right person beside you could make the weight bearable.